Hey, welcome back to Change the Odds, the podcast where marriage and family were never meant to be a game of chance. Kevin Thompson with you, Blaine Neufeld.
Yes, sir.
Here we are. No Adrian today.
Sad to say it.
Oh, you know what that means?
No.
Whatever you say, we're
Yes.
going to assume that's the way it goes. That is
Finally. Finally, there's no accountability.
all right. So I don't know if you noticed this, but there is one of our coworkers that I'm not going to name.
Okay.
There is one of our coworkers who regularly preaches at Granite Bay, Bayside Granite Bay, who he will tell a story on Saturday night
Oh, yes.
in which he's the hero, his wife is the villain. 8:15, he's the hero, his wife is the villain. 9:45, oh my goodness, this story has radically changed.
Oh, why is that, Kevin?
And she is brilliant. And then 11:30, we're back to the normal story. Have you noticed that?
What service does she attend?
No, it's probably 9:45. I have to admit, so as a guy who does marriage conferences all over the country, it does. You're aware.
Oh, it's got to change the vibe.
You are aware.
Yes.
But I mean, my general theory is, look, I'm not going to tell a story in which Jenny's the idiot and I'm the hero because. First of all, how rare would that be? I wouldn't have enough material. But then beyond that, that's unfair. I'm on stage, right?
Yeah,
so,
she doesn't- yeah.
But it is funny. It does impact. And so Adrian's absence today frees you up.
One thing we've and I think this is just I'm thankful for these traits in our marriage is we're pretty brutally honest in front of each other.
Yeah.
So that we can just be ourselves.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I know a lot of buddies that whatever, hey, don't, post a picture because I'm golfing today because my wife doesn't know I'm golfing today. Come on, guys.
That's a problem.
Just admit
that's a
it.
problem.
Work it in the schedule. Be
Yes.
respectful of her schedule because clearly you're feeling guilty about something. So just face the facts.
If you can't tell it,
Yeah.
yes. We are. It is hard to sit here with you today, Blaine, because yesterday you did give me a beating on the golf course.
Wasn't necessarily me. It was others.
That my wife does know happened, by the way.
She did?
Yes,
Okay, good.
She knew we were playing,
Okay.
and she knew I did not play well at all. And I'm confused here today.
But at least it's 1 out of 10 that you didn't play bad. The other 9, you were fantastic.
That was horrible.
Just
All right,
so she knows.
so today
Yes.
we're talking about marriage. Clearly, change the odds. Yeah, we're also talking about parenting. But our focus today is not so much on how to parent, although there's going to be some elements that go with that. But I want to focus more in on how can we make sure that these lovely, beautiful, God-ordained children who can sometimes be anything but that
Yes.
don't create a wedge
Oh, yeah.
between us. And so Jenny and I, before we had kids, we could see that we're very compatible people. Our personalities are extremely compatible. We're different, but we're different in very complementary kind of ways.
Yeah.
All those kind of things. But we could see what was coming, that she and I were raised in radically different ways.
Okay.
So she is rural Oklahoma. It was you wake up on Saturday morning and you start doing the chores and you're working and you're doing all these things, right? And I was in suburbia, right? You sleep in on Saturday morning,
Right.
you relax, and it's kind of a kid-centric culture, the kids' sports and all those
Matter.
things. For her parents, the kids' sports mattered, but man, you still had all these chores to do and doing all that. And so we could see heading into parenting, this will probably be our toughest issue. Now, what's intriguing to me is for her and I, we have been more unified, I think, in parenting than maybe we thought we would be. But parenting has been the most difficult aspect of marriage for us. Jenny and I joke all the time, man, marriage is easy. It's parenting.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
That's so difficult. What is y'all's experience been like?
It would be somewhat similar. I think about the upbringings. I mean, sport for my family was it. That was my career. So it was around that, and we like to go have fun and be busy and do things. So I always think about a vacation. We've talked about this in the past. For us, it's going, doing. For Adrian's family, it was sitting and relaxing. And so it was kind of that, what are the priorities? We're out going, seeing people, doing the things. They're more introverted. They have their family, their cousins, and they would really see them a lot, right? It was kind of different. But when it comes to now, how do we adapt that to our parenting? We're in the mix of it right now. Like, I've got stories coming out of my mind right now of the last couple of weeks of just how our kids' personalities have dictated how we parent them and how we're navigating how to make a decision but also include our kids, but not let our kids be the ones to truly dictate the decision for gain their happiness. So that's an interesting one that we've just experienced, because we're traveling back and forth from Canada to here, and we're trying to figure out what to do at the end of the school year. And do we take them out early? And hey, Cash, what do you want to do? And he was like, well, I want to stay. Okay, we'll stay. Adrian, you and the girls go. I'll come later. And then my grandma passed away, so then we had to go quicker. And then it was like, hey, Cash, we're gonna go quicker. No, I don't want to. And just like we're learning. Don't ask them, tell them.
Yeah, there is an element of that.
And every time it wasn't good enough anyway for him, so we're gonna stop letting him decide.
Oh,
We've learned that the last couple
it's difficult to you want your kids to be empowered.
Yes.
To have a say over their life. I think that's a very important concept whenever they're little specifically. But at the same time, we can't allow them to become the ultimate decision makers. So for this conversation, we're going to look across the life spectrum. What I like about kind of where we are at this moment is your kids are a little bit younger than mine. So I'm at 17 and 19.
Yeah, we're at 9, 7, and 4.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
So we basically have 0 to 19 covered.
Yeah.
But let's recognize that means we don't have 20 to 60 covered.
Right.
And if there's anything pastoring has taught me, it's that parenting doesn't stop. As a matter of fact, it sometimes gets more difficult because what happens is, and this is true across the life stage, I would say generally speaking, is as the consequences of your kids' decisions increase, your power decreases.
Interesting.
Which is what makes it so difficult from a parenting perspective. And that's one reason I wrote Stay in Your Lane, is just that idea to empower parents, specifically of adult children, of how do you navigate this season of life?
Yeah.
Because it used to be that you got to say, here's what's happening.
Exactly.
It used to be that you had a right to say, even if they didn't follow it.
Yeah.
Then it transitions into a season you have no right to speak.
Yeah.
Unless invited into kind of that circumstance. So we are going across the life stage, the lifespan. So here's what we have today. We have 5 points.
Okay.
5 basic principles of how to keep parenting from dividing your marriage.
Like it.
And so we want to be unified now as a family, and the family is now built on this foundation of marriage. So let's start here. Let's start with number 1, that I want couples to reaffirm that their marriage does, in fact, come first. I remember years ago, I was playing golf. This is back in the Twitter days. I don't know. You remember Twitter?
Yeah, X.
Yes, now X. And so this is when everybody had a Twitter account, and it was politically acceptable to have one. And so I'm walking down the golf course having this conversation, and I just quickly tweeted out. This is like 2010.
Right.
I just quickly tweeted out, wife before kids, both win. Kids before wife, both lose, right? Quickly got this response in which a friend of mine was thinking about that in terms of chronology. And so he had a child before he got married.
Oh.
And he thought I was taking a shot, saying you have no chance whatsoever because of this. I was so apologetic because I read the tweet and I'm like, I can totally see how he interpreted it that way. Yeah. That was not at all what I had intended. Now, I do believe there's an order to think that's preferred, but it doesn't mean you're doomed now if that doesn't happen. But it is this principle that when I put Jenny before my children, it's actually to the benefit of my children. And yet whenever I prioritize them over her, then that actually endangers them. Right. And so we need to come back to this idea that we were married before them. We hopefully will be married after they're out of the house.
Absolutely.
And literally that the foundation of this family is now built upon primarily my love for Jenny, her love for me, and then everything else ripples from that. Because when that is not solid, there are consequences that flow out that we can't even begin to imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it brings me up to think of how intentional we've been lately, too, of just how we interact. I often ask, hey, guys, do you guys know who I love the most out of all you? And they're like, me, daddy, me. And I was like, no, not you. And then one of them will eventually say, oh, you love Jesus the most. I'm like, yes, I do love Jesus the most, but who do I love second most? And I love mommy. I love mommy more than you. Like, we're joking. It's a good banter, but it's like, I love mommy the most, and we're the best friends, and they get a little annoyed, but then, we'll be affectionate in front of them. I just need them to know that your spouse is your teammate and you love them the most. And I love my kids so much, but it's fun to banter back and forth, because when Age and I are unified, it's a happy house. Like, to my point about Cash trying to dictate, or us actually giving him the power, we're setting him up to fail, because he doesn't know how to wield that power. He doesn't know what decisions are, what flight are we taking? What are the costs? What are the things? He knows one thing. I want to have fun with my buddies, and I don't want to miss out on that. Nothing else matters. We're thinking about all these things. So it's unfair, to your point of division, because now suddenly, if I want to give my kid the power or make him happy, and the spouse is like, no, that actually makes no sense, we got to do this, this, and this, suddenly we're fighting. For what reason? Because we're trying to appease somebody. But when we're unified and we come first and we've discussed the plan, I got no problem now actually going and say, okay, Cash, here's one option or two option. Which one do you want? Because Mom and I have figured out which two options we can do here. Perfect, great. Right? That sort of thing.
I love that, because you're empowering him to be a part of the process, but you're not making him king by any means.
Yeah.
I do think, let's look at this from a couple different angles. So the idea that marriage comes first. So one of the temptations, especially in the culture in which we live, and you're right in the middle of it, we're just coming out of it, is to run a child-centric home, to where the kids, unintentionally almost, it's not like we consciously choose this, but we are continually elevating them and their schedules, their decisions, their desires above the whole, above the marriage. And what happens then in that moment is they never learn to be a part of something bigger than themselves.
Right.
It actually just kind of reestablishes kind of Western thought of the most important thing is the individual.
Yeah.
And so, of course, my parents'
good.
lives are centered around me.
Right.
Isn't everybody's lives centered around me?
Right.
But there is something powerful about recognizing I matter, but I'm not the only thing.
Right.
That I am fully loved.
Right.
Dad can love mom too. And that's not a shot at me in any way. So one of the dangers that we have is a kid-centric home. And whenever the children become the first priority, the ultimate priority, at the expense of everybody else, specifically your spouse, then your marriage isn't going to come first. But then there's another danger that I think that we have within this. And this is just a practical reality of kids are demanding, depending on what age they are. And the bad news for you is this, that sometimes the 19-year-old can be more time consuming than the 9-year-old.
I bet.
FYI.
Yeah.
You never know. And obviously we're in a situation where we have a child with special needs as well. But just the practical time demands of it. There are seasons in which your kids will need more of you than your spouse gets. Have no problem with that.
Right.
That's life. Here's where I have a problem. When that becomes the norm.
Right.
And I think one of the great dangers to the idea of your marriage not coming first is when you cognitively say, yes, my marriage is first, but practically the time it's never prioritized.
No. Yeah, and I am beyond grateful seeing our rhythm. So pastor to church, what's the busiest day? Sunday. So Sunday has been a day where a lot of families are getting together and people are doing fun things, and that's kind of a work day for us. I'm beyond thankful for the fact that Friday is our day off because the kids are in school and Age and I are together all morning, for 3-4 focused hours with each other. Right. Sometimes we even come on here and this is fun for us to do together. And then we go for lunch and whatever. But to have that focus time has been allowing us to just like talk through. I remember one was like, what's bugging you? It bugs me when you were doing bedtime and you take Cash because he's easy, and I'm stuck with the girls, and I'm
That's just gender specific. I can't help it.
What's the guy to do? and then not only do I do that, I take my laptop in there and we watch baseball highlights together. So in my mind, I'm thinking, and this wasn't communicated before we did it 7 nights in a row, and she's annoyed now because he's like, you got to go to bed. Why are you watching highlights?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about how special in the future it's going to be for Cash to think back, wow, Dad spent all this time together. I didn't think about Adrian at all in that moment, right? And so to be able to communicate that and do quality time and like have a conflict with each other before we go and do the thing, has been really, we've seen the results really improve in our fights. Because now it's like, no, Cash, I'm not going to do this tonight because I want to also spend time with the girls. I'm going to help Mom. That's important. Mom comes before your desire to watch Mariner highlights with me. That sort of thing. It allows us to be unified. And Cash, I love you. Like, to your point, you're fully loved. But at the same time, this is my priority, is Mom's happiness and our marriage. So that's been a cool example, I think, of this point.
Oh, yeah. I do think there's one caveat within this, and I'm not going to have a definitive answer on it, but I do recognize the difficulty of it. What you and I are talking about is a traditional nuclear family.
Correct.
Where there is no question, when I prioritize Jenny, that is to the benefit of Ella and Silas.
Yeah.
Where families have blended, this is not as clear cut.
Okay.
And this is very fairly debated. And I have seen it done poorly, where people, man, honestly and humbly hear a conversation like this, and then they're like, oh, I got to prioritize my new wife over my kids.
I see, yeah.
And there's just a more complicated dynamic in that. Because when I prioritize Jenny over Ella and Silas, in the long run, there is no question Ella and Silas are going to benefit from that. And eventually they will actually be able to one day see that and recognize, oh, I'm glad Dad did this.
Right.
It's not as
the
simple.
same.
It's not as simple in a blended family. That there has to be some give and take there, where the kids are prioritized in such a way that the spouse sometimes it is kind of off to the side. And how do you fairly prioritize this new marriage without doing more harm and damage to the children? That's one of the reasons I think it's so important as couples are blending, to make sure that there is counseling that's involved, to make sure there is a healthy community to help process through, so that we can properly apply some general principles that are easy to apply in other situations that are just more complicated here. So I just want to make sure that we got that caveat. All right, so step number 1, we're going to reaffirm that our marriage comes first. Number 2, we're going to get on the same page before the conflict happens. Here's what I think happens in so many couples with parenting. What makes parenting divisive for couples is we don't recognize how we were raised differently. We make assumptions of how we're going to handle circumstances. Something happens, and we just launch into how we're going to handle it. Well, suddenly our spouse has a different opinion about it.
Yes.
And if you don't recognize when something happens, my spouse might have a different viewpoint of how to parent this based on her personality, her background, her upbringing, her experiences as opposed to mine, then you're just going to assume y'all are on the same page instead of actually working to get on the same page. So maybe another way to write this, if step number 1 is reaffirm that your marriage comes first, step number 2 is this idea of work to get on the same page. Don't assume it.
Yeah. I wonder how involved personalities are here, because now I'm thinking about how we handle conflict.
100%.
Right? It's Blaine, go deal with that. Hold on. Why do I have to go deal with it? You guys, you and the child are in conflict with one another, right? Why would, because her personality doesn't want argument. So I come and be, let's say, the bad guy, right? And there's been times where, not that I'm Adrian's coach, but we're working together. It's like, well, what I see here is, don't ask. Tell them what we're going to do, right?
Yes.
And well, that's not her personality. So then there's times where it's like, just tell them we don't want Dad to be involved if we, or I don't know what the right word is, because we want Dad to be involved. But at the same, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like how interesting personalities create the conflict because of that difference.
No question.
of
And
attack.
we'll actually come back to that point. We can
Okay.
talk about it now. I want to
Okay.
talk about it now, but we will hit that point again later where we talk about strengths and weaknesses
Okay.
of each other. But let's talk about this for a moment, because there's two things that I think are integrally in play that you and I have talked about at length here, and now it applies from a parenting and a marriage standpoint, and that is personality and attachment. So you do have. Let's go personality first. So Adrian Wright is going to be a primarily agency, dyadic. We've talked about this, right? A peacemaker,
Yeah.
right? A harmonizer
Yes.
with everything that's going on. So she's going to have this very natural ability to come in and actually lower tension, ease tension. If she's not careful, she'll actually sideline herself on occasion to keep the peace of what's going on, right? Well, you're going to be much more agency outward. Just come in and handle it.
Handle
Like,
it,
let's
baby.
take care
Yeah.
of this. Why are we wasting time
Right.
on all of this?
This
Where it can be
sounds like
solved.
bedtime.
Yes, it can be solved so quickly.
Yeah.
So there's great strengths in both of those personalities. Those are pathways you both just very naturally flow to, and so you can leverage those, which is great. And on a good amount of time, it's no problem for Adrian to say, "Hey, Dad's going to handle that. And you're going to walk in and handle it. It's not that big of a deal."
No.
However,
Right.
if you're always the bad guy and she's always kind of avoiding the tension that's there, that can get into a bad pattern,
Yeah.
right? And so what needs to happen there is she can recognize my tendency will be to diminish this, downplay this, and expect Blaine to handle it. There are times where I'm going to have to lean in.
Right.
And in the same way that you're going to naturally come in and sweep in and take care of things, there are going to be actually times which you're going to have to back off. So think about what we talked about in the past as far as personality. If there are 9 basic personality pathways and we primarily lean toward 1 or 2, it doesn't mean that we don't have the capability to leverage the other ones.
And yeah, right.
We have to recognize, here's my tendency. Does this situation need my tendency?
Right.
Or does it need me to intentionally take on a different pathway that doesn't come as easy, but I do have the capability to do that. Adrian, I have no doubt.
Right.
Adrian has the capability of putting her foot down.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And so to that point, like no different than I don't want her to make me the bad guy. I have a tendency to almost make her the bad guy. So now when you say I come in and do it and get it done, I also come in and make all kinds of fun.
Yeah.
Right. So
There you go.
let's talk bedtime. Don't rile them up.
Oh, yeah.
But I can rile them up because I also know how to stop it and say, but I remember like literally going back to like 6th grade right now, where the teacher was like, took me aside. And it was a profound lesson they taught me was, Blaine, you're very, very good at having lots of fun and then stopping and then focusing. The person sitting beside you has no chance.
Yeah.
They're having so much fun and then they just keep floating in fun. They don't know how to turn it off. So
Yeah.
can you be a leader and make sure that you don't get them down the wrong path?
Oh, that's good.
Because I know you can. And I'm like, whoa, what a responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's the same way that it goes to bedtime. It's just like, I got no stress riling them up because I'm like, hey, lights off, done. And I take them and I rock Raya and she goes to sleep, like this. But Adrian is quitting because she's so overwhelmed because she doesn't know how to stop the fun, right? So that I'm setting her up to then get mad and snap on the situation, and it's like not fair to her because of that. So it's interesting how it can go both ways.
Oh, there's no question. So you have personality on the one hand. So you got to recognize your personality, your tendency, but then be mature enough to leverage other patterns, no doubt. But then you also have attachment. And I see this within Jenny and I. So Jenny has primarily a secure attachment pathway. I have a more anxious attachment pathway, which means from a parenting perspective, there are times in which I will be afraid to confront because I don't want the tension.
Okay.
How is that going to be received? I'm so worried about the relationship dynamic.
Yeah.
Instead of just being the parent.
Right.
Well, Jenny
good.
has no hesitation
Right.
with
Right.
that and is looking at me going, what's going on? So whereas personality, there's no right or wrong. We need to be able to leverage other attachment. We have to recognize there is a healthy approach and an unhealthy approach.
Yeah.
And so if I'm not very careful, my anxious attachment can prevent me from really being the parent that Ellen Silas needs me to be.
Right.
And in those moments, Jenny can encourage me.
Yep.
I can feel my own conviction and seeing as she models what we actually should be doing and to move forward in some way. But the key to all of that, I think, is this awareness before you get into the dynamic in the situation.
Yes.
Because I think what happens with a lot of families is they don't think about these things beforehand, and then you have very little chance to process them properly.
For sure.
In the moment. You're just going to be frustrated with yourself.
That's great.
And with others as well.
I think quickly, like, also when you're not unified, as much as we love our children, their survival instincts are to push the boundary.
Oh, 100%.
And they're learning our personalities quicker than we probably want to admit. So I know where to push the line on mom, and I know where to push the line on dad.
You're telling me you don't know with your parents exactly to this day. If you want something, if you need something, which one am I going to ask? When am I going to ask them? How am I going to ask them? What am I going to say?
Literally last week.
So even the idea as a small kid, you know,
Pops has got no time for it. Mom, I can push right.
Or you could go to your dad and say, hey, if mom agrees, will you do this? Or can I do this? Well, yeah, if mom agrees. Then you go to mom. Hey, dad has said that I can do this. Are you okay? Right? So you can, the kids are brilliant in that. And we can't blame them for that. That's just,
I know dad wouldn't agree, so I just go to mom.
No,
Mom. Okay, sure, of course, baby Blaine. I'm still baby Blaine.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
Still?
It's the best.
Where are you?
I'm the fourth boy of the four.
Oh, you are literally the
I'm
baby.
literally the baby.
Oh, you're still leveraging that.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, 38, still the baby.
On this same topic, and I think we talked about this previously, but on the same topic, there's another area where I think, especially when your kids are little, I don't know if it's the same whenever they're older. It's kind of the same for us at the age that we're at now, and that is the more you can clarify the expectations before a situation and what the consequences of those expectations are, the easier life will be. But when you have not in your own mind and with your children communicated, here's the punishment, here's the consequence.
That's good.
If this family rule is violated, then it puts pressure on you in the moment to not only now do you have to litigate the circumstance, you now have to judiciate what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of pressure on us
Big
at
time.
times that we're already frustrated. We're probably tired. It just puts ourselves in a position where we're almost guaranteed to fail. It would be the equivalent of, if I'm a basketball player, I'm never going to practice free throws. But now I expect in the pressure moment of the big game to hit the free throw.
That's good.
It doesn't work. How do you hit the free throw in the big game?
Right.
You practice so much that it's now just this automatic thing.
Yeah.
If parents would clarify what are our basic values, what are our basic rules, if those are violated, what are the consequences that are age appropriate now? Then it takes all the pressure off. And notice this, not only does it take the pressure off from me getting the ruling right, but then beyond that, it then puts me in a position where I'm supporting my child through the consequences that they have chosen to experience, rather than being the one who's forcing those consequences upon them.
Yeah. Never mind when the kids don't even know the rules. So if you haven't established the rules, how is it fair to the child that's trying to walk the line and figure out where is the limit here, right? So what is the I wouldn't have done that if I knew the consequence. You know, can I use one example?
Yeah, please.
So we just don't like YouTube, okay, for kids, okay? That's just where we're at because of the language. A lot of these videos, just casual, fun, great videos, but then they'll say some sort of word or swear word or whatever. So suddenly we're like, whoa, no. But the child's heard it. Cash is 9, he's heard some word, and now he accidentally said something at home. And I said, whoa. If you say that word again, so I didn't discipline him that time. A, he doesn't know how severe the word is, but also he's testing out the boundaries, right? And so I said, okay, if you said that word ever again, you will be getting hot sauce. He hated it. You're going to get a little bit of hot sauce in your mouth.
Wow.
And that's going to
Where's Barbara Wilson? Can we get her back on the program?
We don't want soap. The old trick was soap, right? And hot sauce is fine. It's a food, you know. This is where my mind's going. And he says, no, not the hot sauce. I said, then just don't say the word again. It's pretty simple, right? He doesn't say the word. One day happens to say the word. I was like, oh boy, here comes the hot sauce. Because I also have to follow through.
Oh, have
right?
to. Yeah.
So get the hot sauce. We're talking like a little speck on a spoon, right?
Yes.
And it's a fight and he's crying. And I'm like, Cash, this is tough because this is the thing. He's like, okay, this was the rule. Licks it. And that was it. And never has said the word again.
Oh, there you
go. He doesn't
go.
want the discipline of that scenario.
Wow.
But there was a pretty extreme example. But
let's note next time Barbara's on the show, we're gonna have a hypothetical scenario to see what the.
And you can see Adrian, who doesn't want conflict. No, not Cash. Don't, Daddy. It's like I'm like, no, I have to do it.
Oh, you have to. Yeah, you have to stick with it.
Stick with the anyway.
So let's talk about this. Here's a big issue. I think we got to move on from this topic. But
sure,
do we fight in front of the kids or not? That's the question.
Wow. If here's something our good friend who pastors on Sunday and his wife,
I guarantee you they fight in front of the kids.
So where we've learned from her, she said, what we don't ever do is we don't reconcile in front of the kids. Enough. So like if you fight in front of the kids, you have to reconcile in front of the kids. Sorry to make that point clear. Right? So we always fight, and then we go to bed and we're like, what are we doing? I'm so sorry. But the kids are sleeping. They don't see that mom and dad made up. So the next day, is everything okay? Like what's going on? Are mom and dad still mad at each other? In their world, in their shoes, they have no idea. So, and this has helped, I've helped a few marriages recently. I was like, have you ever considered reconciling in front of the kids to just unify your home and saying it's a safe place again?
Yeah.
We are good to go. And that has radically changed their marriages because the kids are now feeling safe. Everybody's a little bit easier, that sort of thing. So that's one thing. If you happen to fight in front of your kids, which I think is okay because you're human beings, make sure you reconcile in front of your kids to know that.
I love what I love about that is it's such an important marital skill, life skill, parenting skill, something we have to train our kids on. And that is the psychological term or the term that's used in married life a lot is rupture and repair. Ruptures are going to happen. Disagreements are going to take place. Relationships are going to be severed a little bit. You have to learn to repair those.
Yeah.
And so from a marriage standpoint, the old assumption was that bad marriages just experience more fights, more conflict, and good marriages experience less. That's really not true. Basically, the difference between healthy marriages and unhealthy marriages is healthy marriages have this ability to repair. The connection is recreated after the division that takes place. So what I love about that example that you just gave is now we're modeling for our kids how we can repair this.
Yeah.
I would be very careful.
Okay.
I think it is good and fair to disagree in front of the kids, to have conversations about those disagreements. I would be very hesitant to quote unquote fight in front of the kids because our children do not have the capability to recognize this disagreement in the context in which it is in. And literally, especially if you are angry and frustrated, in my opinion, that needs to be taken into privacy where we can work it out.
Yeah.
Now, there's no doubt there's going to be frustrations that spill out in front of the kids. I have no problem with that. And where your point needs to be taken is that we do need to repair in front of that. Am I going to fight with Jenny in front of my children at any age? No.
Right.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm just uncomfortable with, to me, that is such a personal thing that's going on.
Right.
Now, I don't believe that we fake it in front of the kids and all that kind of thing. And again, Jenny and I can have a very honest conversation. I remember when the kids were little, we're having just an honest conversation. We have differing opinions, and Silas is there, and he's like, "Mommy and Daddy are fighting," and I'm like, "No, actually, we're not. You want to see that? That's a whole different viewpoint, right?" But even there, he could sense the disagreement, which I'm totally good with that. But if you emotionally cannot regulate in that moment, and then I don't want the kids to be around in the midst of our own emotional dysregulation. But let's be honest. Different personalities of marriages are going to have different things. You think about the old Italian marriage, right? I mean, not to be stereotypical, but I mean that's the concept. Well, all right, that's going to be a louder house, right? Jenny and I don't ever communicate in that way, but I would be hesitant especially based on age of kids. Also, you got to watch out for temperament of kids. So even the dynamic, my son is a more sensitive temperament. And so by sensitivity, I don't mean soft by any means. What I mean is it takes less stimulus to get a response.
Right.
So sensitivity is about how much stimulus creates a response. So he is more sensitive. He's more aware. He can see some nuance in things. He'll struggle sometimes with Jenny and Ella.
Yeah.
And just that mother-daughter back and forth.
Right.
And I think we have to be sensitive to recognize I'm having no problem with this conversation whatsoever. What's going on in the heart of this person?
Right.
And so especially you take somebody like Adrian who loves peace, right? So Adrian and Silas are actually going to have the same personality kind of pathway. Well, disagreement, a lack of unity in that moment is going to create more internal chaos in some people than it would in others. You're going to have no problem with it, is my general guess.
Right.
For a little flare up of a moment of disagreement, you're probably going to be pretty comfortable with.
Right.
Adrian's not.
Right.
Silas isn't.
Right.
Sometimes I can struggle with it. I don't think that's my personality as much as that is my attachment.
Right.
But Jenny and Ella can be bickering back and forth, and I can get really uncomfortable very quickly. So we have to be aware of.
Even though to them it's not, it's nothing. It's just
life.
saying what it is. Okay, for me, maybe, and the listener too, it's just like, I think, am I okay to say having a natural disagreement in front of a kid or your kids, and this is life, and you are aware of that feeling they're having, Silas is now uncomfortable, coming back to that and say, hey, Silas, Mom and I've asked for forgiveness. I shouldn't have maybe gone, we're good, because Silas can now feel safe again, I'm sure. I would fully agree, like, you can't do that in front of the kids. Oh, no, please, no, right? So now, if that has happened, because there's people that have done this, and this is, can it be stopped? Can it be corrected? What do we do? Because I got to think the embarrassment sometimes or the one side being very heavy on the other side, and there's a victim in the scenario, because it's very unlikely that it's like this. What do they do? What do we do in that household?
Then that repair needs to happen as a family.
Yeah.
To the extent that it was seen, it needs to happen in that moment. And again, let's remove the shame.
Right.
Right. Conviction's good, but the shame is not going to be useful. But to recognize there's a great power now in repairing in front of our children, and Dad saying, look, I should not have talked to Mom that way. I want to apologize not only to her, and so literally I'm going to apologize to her in front of the kids, but I also want to apologize to you, because you shouldn't have to see something like that. So I think, should we fight in front of the kids? I would say no. Should we disagree in front of the kids? Absolutely. Should we have conversations in which we have different opinions? Passionate? No problem with any of that. Should there ever be a scenario in which a husband yells at a wife in front of the children? No. Should there ever be a scenario in which a wife says demeaning things to the husband in front of the children? Absolutely not. I don't care what age they are. I don't care what's happening in that moment. We have to model respect. We have to model emotional regulation. And whenever that is violated, that then has to be repaired, not just in the privacy of the bedroom. That has to be repaired in the publicity of the family room, to where I am confessing to everybody. And let's face it, every family is going to make mistakes. Every person's going to make mistakes. Yeah. This is not, we have to be 100% on this. This is a guiding principle. In the same way that whenever your kids violate a family rule, there are consequences that take place. Yeah. When I, as a parent, violate a family rule, that I am disrespectful in the midst of disagreement to my spouse, that has to be a public repair that takes place. And here's the power of it. It actually could be that the repair does more good than never making the mistake at all.
Correct.
Might do. Yes. And so you just lean into that.
Because I think about when you say like, Italian or just a loud marriage, let's say, right? It's, you have the opportunity as a parent right now to humble yourself, apologize, or do the things, because what you're doing is I'm teaching Cash how to be married.
Yes.
Right now, at 9 years old.
Yes,
He has
100%.
no idea, but I'm doing that. And I want to rectify any mistakes I've learned or done so that he has a better chance of recognizing that when he's married subconsciously. Right.
Yes.
So those loud marriages can be stopped with you for your next generation.
Oh, it literally changes
Game
generation.
changing. Yeah.
There's no, and I got to be careful because again, I can't read my personality and Jenny's personality into every marriage. Marriages are going to have different volumes.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Families are going to have different volumes. To me, it's not necessarily the volume.
It's the intent.
It's respect.
Yeah, respect. Yeah.
Disrespect is unacceptable. Can we talk loudly? Absolutely. You know how this works.
Yeah.
You're never going to hear me yelling
Right.
at anybody on anything.
Right.
But I can quietly be disrespectful. Well, that's not allowed. In the same way that other friends of ours can be very loud, and yet they are respectful.
Yeah.
All right, we got to pick it up. We got to speed up.
I'm
No,
sorry.
we're good. This is brilliant.
No time for Adrian. I just keep talking,
All right, here we go. We got 5 minutes and we got 3 points that we got to get through. All right, so one thing, and this kind of goes with what we were just saying, to speak as one voice in front of the kids. And I do think that ironically, this continues kind of throughout the life stage. That what we're getting back to is what we talked about earlier. We get the picture of the small kid recognizing how to divide mom and dad and get what they want, and that's good. But if parents can get in the habit now of whenever their children of any age ask of them something, instead of even tipping their hat at their opinion and say, oh, I'm fine with it if your dad is, let me talk to him. Because then that makes dad the bad guy.
Totally. Yeah.
Instead, it's, man, that's a great question. I'll talk to dad about it and we will get back to you. Right? And so you just get in this habit now of you're seeing yourself as a unified team. So you can actually never speak fully for the team. There's some decisions you have to make together in a room, and one of you cannot make it for the other. And so you just communicate that in the same way. We see this in workplaces all the time. Somebody asks me, an employee asks me a question.
Right.
Well, you know what? I don't have the full authority to make that decision. I get to be a part of that decision. I don't have the full authority to make it. So what do I tell them? Let me check and I'll get back with you.
Yeah.
We need to create that habit within our marriages so that we do have a unified front in front of our kids. And this isn't hypocrisy. This isn't we're appearing unified when we're really not.
Right.
No. This is
we
are
unified.
We actually are unified.
Yeah.
And the way that we do that is we make some decisions in private that then we take public.
Yeah. And I think like a little trick that we've learned is very valuable is we've been proactive. Spending the Friday mornings together, we've talked about so many things that were maybe potential conflicts that we get on the same page. And then as they come up again, because kids are pretty repetitive, we know what we're deciding together. So I get to proactively speak, no, that is something that mom and I don't agree that we do. YouTube. Okay, that is no. Cash that in the mornings, no. And so anyway, a proactive approach versus let me get back to you, son. Like you want to be able to react to them in the moments too. So be proactive, get on the same page before some of these things.
Before we hit the last 2 points, I think this is a great time to bring up, hey, if you're listening today, don't forget Kevin A. Thompson at YouTube is a great YouTube channel there.
One day we're back on YouTube.
One day when Cash is old enough, he can look at it. But follow us on all social media, especially YouTube.
I love it.
All great clips there. All right, number 4. We've talked about this already, so we can go quickly, but there are a couple of points I think we need to make. Number 4 is let's respect each other's strengths and roles. And so here's what I love. Here's where a healthy marriage has such an advantage over an unhealthy marriage. In a healthy marriage, their differences are appreciated and then leveraged for the well-being of everybody. Jenny and I could not, in some ways, parent more differently. We were brought up in different ways. We have different personalities. In some ways, that is so different. And that has been one of our greatest advantages. Because when my way doesn't work, guess what? There's more in the toolbox.
So good.
Oh, it hadn't worked? Well, here comes your mother.
Yeah.
Let's see. And seriously, there have been times throughout our kids' lives, now 2 decades, in which we've had this disagreement. We're trying to figure out how we're going to handle this. And I'll say, you try it.
Yeah.
Let's go with your way.
Yeah.
And we try her way and great success. And I think to myself, wow, I didn't think that would work. And look at how it did. And then there's other times in which it's not working very well. And then we're like, well, let's try my way.
Yeah.
And man, times that works, and Jenny's like, I never knew that would have worked.
Right.
And other times in which she's probably thinking, although she doesn't say, man, I told you that's probably not the best way to do it.
Yeah.
But unhealthy couples see those differences as a battle between the parents
Right.
instead of recognizing we now have two different ways
Correct. What a win.
that we can try and parent these kids. And so to leverage that for our benefit.
Yeah. Yeah, the 1.2, like just bring attention you wrote down too, is name the one thing that your spouse did well that week.
Yes.
Like, I've never thought about that.
Yes.
But the fact that I could go, babe, I love it.
Yes.
You're so good at this. She feels better about it. Like, that made our team better. Wow.
Yeah.
What an attribute versus, yeah, exactly.
As
to your
opposed
point.
to what?
Yeah. But
As opposed
I wouldn't
to
have done it that way.
Let me call out your parenting fail of the week. Right? It's on the screen. I've watched the video cameras. And look, let's see how you handle
Let's
this.
run the tape.
So I do think now there is a place. I think there is a place where you have someone who's in the trenches with you, but just stands a little bit outside of you that can help you see, hey, here's why what you're trying isn't working.
Yeah.
I do think there is a place for that. We have to be very careful with that.
Right.
Because the last thing that we want is, as we're parenting, to feel like our spouse is over there judging how we're parenting is going to fill our ear with all the mistakes that we've made. So we got to be careful about that. But there is maybe a way to go about it is, if you're struggling, ask your spouse, hey, is there anything that you see in my parenting that I think I'm doing one thing, but I'm actually coming across in a different way?
Right.
You said one thing earlier that's something Jenny and I talk about on occasion of, hey, I heard what you said, and you think you told the child to do this.
Right.
You actually gave them a choice.
Right.
And when they didn't do it, you got frustrated, but you couldn't figure out why. Let's go back and listen to what you actually said, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's helpful. I mean, I'll tell Jenny, look, in the old days, she would say, hey, do you want to empty the dishwasher? Nope. I
don't want to.
There's actually no desire in me whatsoever. Will I?
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
So even the question,
It's good.
will you empty the dishwasher? Yes. Do you want to empty the dishwasher? No.
Right.
All right. In her mind, those mean the same thing. They're radically different. Well, if that's true to her 47-year-old husband,
Right.
how much more true
Totally.
is that to a 17-year-old boy, a 19-year-old girl who are masters
Yes.
at reading the parenting contract that has just been stated to find the loophole to get out of what is going on.
Totally.
So I do think that we can provide that compassionate outside perspective if asked. I think that's one thing we should do. We should ask more often, be slower to offer that, but then to be more likely to praise what we see going well
Yeah.
rather than to critique
Love it.
what isn't going well.
I love it.
All right, finally, number 5, we got to make sure that we're going to fight the real enemy. And who is the enemy? It is not each other. It's also not the kids, right? We have an opponent who doesn't want us to love each other well,
Yeah.
and to recognize life itself is going to be difficult. But the moment it turns into me versus you, we're in a great deal of trouble.
Yeah.
And what's funny is, and it's not funny, it's sad, our kids will feel that.
Totally.
And then think about what that forces them to do. They're having to pick a side.
Yeah.
And kids shouldn't have to do that. Kids can't do that.
No.
So we have to make sure that we are now prioritizing each other in such a way that we recognize who the real enemy is. So let's review these real fast. We're going to, number 1, reaffirm that our marriage comes first. We're going to get on the same page. We're going to do the work to get on the same page before the conflict actually happens. We're going to speak in one voice in front of the kids. We're going to respect each other's strengths and differences and roles. And then we're going to fight the real enemy, which is not each other. If you and I can do that, it will go a long way to making sure that our parenting doesn't divide our marriage. Instead, it becomes a platform and a playground in which our marriage is actually strengthened.
Love it.
Yeah. Sounds great. Until next time, don't forget, marriage and family never meant to be a game of chance. Parent well, and that itself will change the odds. See you next time.